When he went to the Rams, he couldn't beat out Case Keenum. He didn't have the right supporting cast. That was a great all-around team, and that shows you how great that Philly team is. To lose Wentz and to still not miss a beat, that's the credit of the team. Now, obviously, like I said, Foles did a great job, but with that said, you go to that Falcons game, their first game in the playoffs. He did not play the greatest that game. If Julio Jones doesn't slip and fall in the end zone, Falcons win that game. And we're not talking about the Eagles right now. We've seen good from Foles and we've seen bad, but we've seen Foles, if he has the right formula, the right cast, he can be a good quarterback for you. Think about where Philly would be if they didn't had acquire Nick Foles. They definitely wouldn't be where they are right now. And that's, again, credit to Doug Peterson. He put together the right team. And that just shows how good that team is. That's why going into the Super Bowl I said Philly's a better all-around team. Now their defense didn't play good, obviously. Brady is the first quarterback to throw for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game, in a Super Bowl, and not win it. But the Patriots defense just didn't do their job. And they struggled in that department all season. Like I said, this is not a defense going into this Super Bowl that was highly rated. They were 29th in the league. They gave up a lot of games of 300 plus yards passing. We don't know exactly what Butler did to get him benched. There's rumor that he got busted being out in places that he shouldn't have been out and apparently used marijuana. And this got back to Belichick, and this is why he was benched. It's easy to sit here and say, well, that's a big reason they lost this game. Butler's a key player of that defense, no doubt about it. If he doesn't pick off Wilson in the end zone, Brady doesn't have a 5th ring. And now there's talk about, there were a lot of people, when they found out that Butler was being benched, where that locker room was split hours before that game. When the team found out that Butler was not going to play, there were a lot of players that were upset. But I don't think it cost them the Super Bowl. It's easy to sit here and say that because they lost and he didn't play. But would it have really made that much of a difference? If the New England defense doesn't let a 4th and 5 get converted, if they don't let a trick play called the Philly Special happen, Patriots win the Super Bowl. Would Butler have made a difference in 2 or 3 plays? It's possible. And that's what this Super Bowl came down to, was 2 or 3 plays. And Philly was 2 or 3 plays better than what New England was. But Brady and the offense didn't lose this Super Bowl. The Patriots defense did. And that's what every Boston insider and Patriot expert was worried about going into this Super Bowl, was that defense. Because it was not an elite defense all year long. This was not a normal Patriots defense. Belichick doesn't always make the best decisions. I go back to earlier in the season when they let Jamie Collins go of that defense. I think that was a huge mistake. A huge mistake. Benching Butler before this Super Bowl, Belichick's going to stand his ground. He's going to make his point known. You have some people that are saying that it wasn't disciplinary. That Belichick didn't start Butler because he felt Rowe would play Alshon better. No. That's not accurate at all. And for the most part, from what we understand, that was not the case. And any right-minded person, nothing against Rowe, but any right-minded person would know that Butler would play Alshon better than Rowe would. And again, it's not like Rowe gave up a lot to Alshon. He didn't. But I don't think that was a deciding factor here. It's easy to sit back there and say that because they lost. But if they would have won the game and Butler didn't start, would it still be a story? Yes. But it wouldn't be as much of a story as it is because they lost. And we'll never know if he would have made that much of a difference. But when it comes down to it, the better game was played by Philly. The better scheming was done by Philly. And that's where you start to win this game. That's where you start to win any game, is in the preparation. That's a part of why Brady has been Brady for the last 17, 18 years. Because of the way that he prepares and schemes. That's why the Patriots have been what the Patriots have been, is because how Belichick plans and schemes. That's when you start to win a game. Doug Peterson went that extra mile. And we know he took insight from Dan Quinn, who lost horribly, last season. Had a 28-3 lead, blew it. Could you imagine what the story would be if New England hadn't won last year's Super Bowl? If they would have got to 2 straight and lost them both, of what the story would have been? And of course, there's a lot of rumor going on now that if they would have won that, Brady and Belichick would have walked away. I don't believe that. I don't think if they would have won that game that would have been it for Belichick and Brady. There's a lot of talk that it would have been. But there was no fact behind that. Neither one of them made those type of comments. There were just a couple of people that were saying that they heard within the Patriots locker room that if they would have won that Super Bowl, that it's a good possibility that at least one of them, if not both of them, would have retired. And that there was an after plan in place there. And it's a hard place to get back to. Do I think that that's the last Super Bowl Brady and Belichick will play in? No. And we can have the argument all day, well, is it better for your record to be 5-3 or 5-5 in Super Bowls, or is it better to be 5-0 and not lose those other 3 games? I think if you ask any player, hey, you're going to get to 8 Super Bowls, but you're going to lose 3 of them. You're going to win 5, but you're going to lose 3. They're going to take that. And it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But obviously we all know what the Patriots are going to attack and scheme on is that defense, because they know it costed them a Super Bowl. If that defense is even a tenth of what it was last season or the season before, they win this. They win it handily, possibly. But that defense is why they did not win that game. Brady and that offense played remarkable. The scheme and design they had on offense, it worked perfectly. It was the defense that struggled. They couldn't get to Foles. They had issues in the secondary, which is obviously what we saw all season long. Like I said, 29th in the league. They had a lot of games where they gave up 300-plus yard passers. So with those numbers, you can't sit here and say, well, if Butler would have played, it would have been a different game. And I can understand Patriot players being upset because there's going to be Patriot players that on that team that are going to sit there and say, if Butler would have played in that game, we wouldn't have lost. Because Alshon Jeffrey wouldn't have played the way he did. And that would have took an option away from Foles and would have made him center in on one part of the field. Brady and Belichick are not going to want this to be their last Super Bowl memory. But next season's going to be even harder. The Steelers are going to be better. Jacksonville's probably going to be better. Houston, if they can keep Deshaun Watson healthy, that could be a team that's a factor if they get into the playoffs. But we all know it's a hard road to get to. Dan Marino got to one, lost it, and never got to another one ever again. Cam Newton, a couple seasons ago, got to one, got dismantled by the Denver defense. He hasn't been the same since. That team hasn't been the same since. You don't know if you're ever going to get back. And you gotta believe that that's creeping into Belichick, Brady, and those guys that have been there a while. You gotta believe that that's creeping into their mind. Was this our last chance at another one? Will we get to another one before we retire? And then you have McDaniels, who was believed to take the Colts head job, who was actually packing up his office in New England when Kraft and the staff came to him and got him to stay. We don't know what was said. We're being told that Kraft telling McDaniels that Belichick's going to mentor him, that he'll have more access to Belichick, that that's what got him to stay. I don't believe that. I think that there was a combination. I think McDaniels found out more info about Andrew Luck's shoulder injury, which we are now hearing that Andrew Luck may possibly need another surgery and may not be ready for next season. And then we're being told that Kraft and that Patriots staff told Josh McDaniels that you're going to be the guy when Belichick retires. That it's going to be your job. Now, McDaniels is saying that he got nothing like that. That this was his own decision. That he was not influenced by Robert Kraft, Belichick, and the Patriots, or Tom Brady. This was his own decision. But if you're packing up your office after the Super Bowl, you're at that moment having your mind, I'm taking the Indianapolis job. Something changed his mind there. Whether it was Belichick, Brady, Kraft, all three of them, regardless of who it was, somebody changed his mind enough to get him to stay. And I do believe it was two factors. I think it was one, not knowing so much about Luck's shoulder. And I think the second factor was I think that Belichick, Brady, and Kraft went into that office as he was packing up and said something along the lines of, hey, you're in the running for this job when Belichick is done. And who knows what, we don't know what was said in that moment. Belichick or Kraft could have said to him, look, this is going to be Belichick's last season. You're going to get this job. But obviously, whatever was said, it was enough